Hey YouTube family, it's Dinko the Realtor, your Utah Realtor. Today we're going to analyze when to buy a home in Utah in the Greater Salt Lake area, the Wasatch Front in 2024. And the data is all over the place, but if you're, watching videos on this YouTube channel, you know that I'm going to provide you the data information that nobody else gives you. That way you have the financial information to make a decision you feel financially comfortable with. The first thing we're going to start with is right here. And let me just move myself. Look at the actives. So actives a year ago were 7,141 compared to 7,186 right now. And the inventory kind of is going up here. I want to show y'all right here. Look at this. So right here, inventory has inverted. So right here at the beginning of January, we see that the blue line 2024 was less actives year over year. However, at the end of January and going into February, we see that it inverted and we all of a sudden have more active listings year over year. And why is this important? Well, the reason that it's important is this is actually the first time in 7 months. So remember, inventory in the second half of 2022 started skyrocketing up and we were having big increases year over year on inventory. For the first half of 2023, because we started the year with so much more inventory because of that surge in the second half of 2022, we had way more inventory year over year. And that changed in about end of June, beginning of July, where all of a sudden there was less inventory year over year. So we see that that trend is now changing where we have more inventory year over year. And what is the big change right here? This is actually something to keep an eye out on. I'm going to show y'all everything that's going on. That way you have all the financial information to kind of see, what is really going on here. So remember, I was showing y'all that the reason the housing market did not crash was because of the negative listings, the negative amount of homes that were being put on the market in 2023 compared to 2022. If we analyze this, right, negative 500, negative 1,200, all the way to negative 1,846 in June. So we see that the inventory was just not hitting at the same pace. And if it was, housing would have caused the recession. Those prices would have just continued going down. And I'll get to the prices here as well. Then we see that that trend changed at the end of the year. We see that November and December were the first months where inventory actually started going up year over year. More houses being listed than a year ago, 106 and 256. Well, that's not too much of a big difference, but look at this. And I said, will this trend continue? But look at January. We had a 5,000 or 500 increase year over year. So we had 3,770 new houses, new listings hit the market compared to 3,270 a year ago with an increase of 500. Now, what if this trend continues, right? How would that look? So let's analyze this right here and go over here. Well, if it was negative 500, negative 1,200, and the sales are not really improving, right? I actually want to show you all this. So look at the sales. We're negative 35 to 45% when we're comparing to 2019 or to 2021, right? We're 35 to 45% negative with sales. And we see that the sales in 2023 compared to 2022 were down every single month other than October. Now that trend has changed as well. If we take a look here, solds, we see that it increased 7% in December. So this is the data that's coming in January, right? So we saw the increase in January here of 7%. All of a sudden, sales are up about what is that? 160, right? So sales are up 160. Let's just say 200 to keep math simple. And if we go over here to the listings, we see that it was a positive of 500. So that is a net gain of 300 listings extra because sales went up a little bit, but the amount of homes being listed on the MLS for sale has increased much more. So that is a 300 net increase with the amount of homes, right? And really more like 350. Now, let me just pull this up and I'm going to show you all the prices. So what happens here, right? We were negative in 2023 compared to 2022. Well, what if all of a sudden, we're positive and we see instead of 3,200 listings compared to 3,800 in 2022, we see 3,600, 3,700. And all of a sudden we have a net increase of 400, 500, 700, 800 units of being available. All of a sudden that inventory gap could start increasing if the sales don't pick up at that same pace. And we're seeing that they're not picking up at the same pace even though inventory is coming out at a higher pace, right? So that's one thing to keep an eye out on really, really well. Now I want to show y'all what's going on with price. And I said the prices would uptick in the first half, just like they've been doing in the last 2 years. And if we take a look, that is happening right here, right now. But I want to show y'all what's going on with all of these prices here, just in case if you forgot, if you need a refresher. So $600,000 median home price in May of 2022 was the absolute peak. That's when home prices were the highest they've ever been in the history of the Greater Salt Lake, the Wasatch Front, and in Utah's history. Then they started dropping for 9 consecutive months all the way into January of 2023 to $510,000, upwards of 15%. And then the market got saved because the listings, the amount of homes being listed was just negative to start the year. I mean, look at these 1,000, 1,600, 1,400. So that's what saved the market from continuous. Oh, what am I doing here? Here we go. From this continuous price drops from 9 months, right? If we had the same amount of listings, these price drops would have continued happening. However, that was not the case. Let me just remove these highlights. In February of 2023, home prices started ticking up. So right here is January of 2023 where it bottomed out. Then it started upticking and it peaked in July at $550,000. Then prices started coming down, going up a little. They know what they were doing, coming down, going. So we see that the housing market has stabilized at about $530,000 to $535,000. Well, the bottom has stabilized, right? And now it's going upwards. And we see last year that was $520,000 to $510,000. So we see that a year ago we are up in prices, maybe about 2 to 4% depending on the months that we're comparing. So right now we're probably going to continue seeing as the spring inventory comes, and if we don't see a recession, right? I've been saying if we don't see a recession, if we don't see unemployment go up, we are going to see home prices uptick a little bit in the spring because the buyers come out before the sellers do. However, this time we're seeing that there is actually more sellers coming to the market than a year ago, which could kind of throw a whammy into this whole thing. Are these prices really going to uptick? And what if the recession does hit as inventory is going up, right? And we see that the Fed is very, very bullish on cutting rates, right? Look at this. They don't want to cut anything. So right here, the 10-year Treasury yields jump a second day in a row to 4.17 as rate cut changes get pushed further back. So the Fed and Jerome Powell have been stating, hey, we're not going to cut these rates as soon as the markets are pricing this in. As you know, as what Wall Street is saying that the March Fed cut was up as much as like 80%, 70%. Now it's down to 16%, and it just keeps falling every single week as we're heading further and further into 2024. And Jerome Powell said, look, these rate cuts are not going to be as aggressive as the investors think. It's going to take some time unless something in the economy breaks. He stated this last year, and so if something doesn't break, these cuts are going to be smaller, which these rates in itself, remember, the National Association of Realtors, the Mortgage Bankers Association, and the Builders Association wrote a letter to the Fed urging to cut rates and not sell the mortgage-backed securities because housing could cause that recession. So if these interest rates stay elevated for much longer, maybe housing is going to cause that recession. So nothing has stabilized, right? But we see that prices are upticking. And if we take a look at the 10-year right here, all right, this is when they were saying, you better go out and, let me just move myself, you better go out right here in December because rates are going to just keep falling, they're going to keep falling, and all of a sudden, January comes around and interest rates just start going back up. The 10-year does, and the 10 years what kind of resembles where interest rates are. So what's all going on here, right? I mean, if you want to buy right now, right, you're kind of losing a little bit of that leverage because homes are going off the market quicker. So you are losing a little bit of that leverage. And then people are also just being very optimistic, sellers, agents, builders, everybody, that we're going to see the same uptick that we saw a year ago in the spring. However, that might not happen if this inventory is increasing at a higher pace. So we could all of a sudden have much more inventory year over year by the time we do come to March, April, and May. Those are the months where we did see more bidding wars resume, especially on the entry-level homes. Well, if we all of a sudden have 500, 800, 1,000 homes being listed higher year over year, maybe we're not going to see that uptick and that competitiveness like we did a year ago. But again, until unemployment goes up, until the recession actually happens, I think that we've kind of stabilized as far as prices come until that does happen. And you know me, if you've been watching this video, I do believe we are going to see a recession. The only question is, how much money are they going to able to continuously print, right? I mean, look at this. We got out of 08, 09 by printing more and more money. And then during the pandemic print, I mean, they've just been printing an enormous amount of money since 1980. Just look at this. Look at the national debt. So money is fake. It's no longer real. That's why I can't say, hey, we're going to have a full out crash. Absolutely. Because if they're able to print this money, I think that they're not going to be able to continuously print this money. There's a lot of negotiations going on between the political groups. There's a lot of the credit rating coming down on the US credit rating and potentially another downgrade. So I don't think they're going to be able to print as much money. And the biggest thing to keep an eye out on is how long are these interest rates going to stay elevated, because that's not good for the housing market and that's not good for the car market. And those two are the biggest markets that make up the consumer spending in America, right? People buying homes and people buying cars. Those are the two biggest ticket purchases that anybody makes, or majority of people make. And if these listings are hitting at a higher pace and interest rates are not coming down, nothing has stabilized. So how long do you want to wait, right? If you don't want to wait, I'm still knocking down prices, even with homes that get sent to the market for the buyers that I'm representing, even the homes that get sent to the market and they're on the market for only a couple of days, I'm knocking those down. I had just right now a townhome where it closed. The other one closed before us, maybe about a week. They paid $397,000. We paid $385,000, right? There's some other homes that come to the market that are new listings, that are desirable, that are, upgraded, and I'm able to negotiate prices on those as well. So there still is room as long as you're willing to lose your favorite house. Now, if you're not, then of course your negotiation kind of goes out the window a little bit here. But if you wait until that spring inventory comes, right? You might be shocked by the amount of inventory that comes. We all might be. And all of a sudden it's like, wow, look at this. I can pick from this and this and this. And the buyers are not coming to the market at that increased pace like we're seeing the inventory. So that's the biggest thing to keep an eye out on as we're going here into the spring buying season. If you need to get a hold of me, my contact information is down below.